Hello and welcome to another episode of Dr. Tom's Practical Vet Advice. Now today I'm going to talk not about a pet related question, but one about the veterinary industry. And that is something that I get asked all the time in clinics. Why is there so much variation in cost between different clinics? You might have had the experience of living in the country and you thought clinics seemed a little bit cheaper out there, or maybe you've recently moved to a new area in the city and you might have noticed a big change in the pricing. So there's a few things to discuss here. The first major point is that unfortunately vet clinics are businesses just like any other business. They're a money-making enterprise, and at the end of the day it's up to the person or people who own the clinic to decide how much they charge, depending on, I guess, how much money they want to make and a number of other factors, how much people are willing to pay. So that's one thing. Clinics might be owned by a charity, of course, in which case the cost will be lower. They might be owned by an individual vet, a small group of vets, or sometimes also even a big multinational corporation. And the price incentives or the incentive to make money for them will be different depending on that structure. As I mentioned, country clinics tend to be cheaper than city clinics, so that's another factor as well. The second and really important thing to say is that you're not always comparing apples with apples if you're looking at a price comparison. For the same procedure, you might find a wild variation in price depending on the service level. So to use two examples, let's say skin consultation. So you bring your dog in, it's got itchy skin on its belly. Now, if I get a history, and I can be fairly confident that that's going to be a contact allergy, depending on a few factors. But let's say I'm 95% sure it's a contact allergy. I can say, I think it's a contact allergy. I think this cream's going to clear it up, maybe some tablets, and we go from there. Might have a good result, we might not. Or to do the gold standard workup of an issue like that, what I really consider doing is to take some samples from the skin. So get a little swab and take a swab, do a skin scrape looking for mites, maybe a tape preparation, looking for some fungal elements to see whether we can rule out something infectious that's causing the issue. Now, one's not right and the other's not wrong, it's just a different level of service, and it's up to the client and the vet to decide what you feel is appropriate. I use that as an example because obviously if you come in and get a consultation and some cream, it's going to be fairly cheap. If we do all that workup, it's going to be much more expensive. So you're not necessarily comparing the two of the same thing. A second example might be with a surgery, let's say a desexing procedure, because that's something which people often do price comparisons on. Again, the level of service that you're getting may not be exactly the same depending on the clinic and the individual vet involved. So basic desexing procedure might just involve some fairly cheap anaesthetic medication and some suture material to do the stitch up that comes on a roll, some external stitches which need to come out in say 10 or 12 days. By comparison, another clinic might insist on things like a pre-anaesthetic blood test, intravenous fluids during the procedure to help maintain the blood pressure. The pre-anaesthetic blood test, for example, can be important to rule out any kidney or liver disease that's pre-existing that we don't know about if the animal hasn't had a surgical procedure before. So again, might have a 50%, 100% higher price for one clinic than the other, but you might not be comparing two of the same thing. So very important to ask the clinic exactly what's included and what are they charging for, and if you're not comfortable with the charges, let them know and you can discuss if some or any of the elements may be optional. Thanks very much for watching, guys. If you're enjoying the videos, please feel free to do the usual liking, subscribing and sharing with your friends and colleagues.